Here's something that should not be possible when you start a business for yourself. You can do everything right. You can work harder than everyone around you. You can follow every piece of good advice that you're ever given and still get almost nowhere. And it's not because you're missing something. It's not because you're not good enough, but because you're facing the wrong direction and no one ever told you. Dana was someone like that. You know, she was the person her company turned to when something was broken and no one else could fix it. 22 years inside good organizations, and she was always the fixer. When she finally stepped out on her own, the math seemed obvious. Take everything she knew and offer it to the open market, and the work would come. She did everything right. She built a clean website. She wrote a sharp description for her services. She went out to events. She posted online consistently for months. She followed up. She had coffee after coffee after coffee. And what did she get for all of that? A trickle. Every so often, that effort would produce a meeting, and every once in a while, one of those meetings would turn into a client. So it wasn't nothing. It was just enough to keep her believing that next month was going to be the one when it finally broke open. It never broke open. The business never grew out past the sheer effort it took to drag it. Month after month, the grind stayed exactly as heavy, and the results stayed exactly as thin. And here's what made it so confusing. She could not point to a single thing that she was doing wrong. She was working hard, she was doing all the things successful people told her to do, and it was not adding up. If you've ever lived inside that grind that never compounds, you know the feeling I'm talking about. So let me tell you the first thing that I've learned watching this happen to talented people. The problem is almost never the effort. Dana did not need to try harder. She was already at the edge of what effort could do. More activity in the wrong direction does not break the pattern. It just makes the grind heavier while the trickle stays the same. To understand what was really happening to her, you have to go back the 22 years that came before. Being good at something for a long time does something to you that nobody warns you about. It trains you. Every success teaches you very precisely which signals mean you're on the right track and which actions produce results. And over the years, that learning sinks below the level of thought, where you stop deciding to do those things. You just do them automatically because they've always worked. That is your orientation. It's the invisible frame through which you see your reality. Think about the glasses on someone's face. They're the closest thing in the world to that person's eyes, right there, every waking moment. And within seconds when they put them on, they stop seeing them at all because they're far too busy looking through them. Your orientation works exactly like that. It's the closest thing to how you see, and it's the one thing you never think to examine. You do not think about your orientation. Your orientation decides what you're given to think about. You notice and what you notice and what you walk right past. Inside her company, Dana's orientation was finely tuned and completely correct. She had learned to read the room, to demonstrate her competence, to take the hard problem and show what she could do with it. Those were exactly the right signals, and they were exactly the right signals to read. They got her promoted. In fact, they got her every good thing she had. And then she changed lanes. And here's the thing about changing lanes. From the outside, it looks like such a small move. You go from being an employee inside of a business to being a business yourself. So you assume the same instincts will carry you across. But you have walked into a different game carrying the same trained reflexes, and no one hands you a new set. Those old ones keep firing because they're not choices you're making. They're conditioning you cannot even see. That's the gap. The distance between the orientation you were trained into and the reality that you're actually standing in now. And it's the single biggest thing that trips people up whenever they cross into something new. When that old conditioning keeps running in its place, that it no longer fits, it shows up as what I call a distortion. A distortion is a belief that was completely true in one situation and quietly false in another. It doesn't feel like a belief at all. It feels like good judgment. Because it was good judgment once, that is exactly why it's so hard to catch. The fastest way to recognize one is to watch it happen to someone else first. So let me show you a couple of them. This one from Dana's story. One stretch, that trickle that she had, ran a little bit stronger than usual. And over about 4 months, Dana got in front of 6 senior decision makers inside real companies. This, she thought, was the stretch that would finally change things. She prepared the way she always had. She walked in ready to show them who she was and everything she had done, her background, her track record, the full range of what she could take off their plate. In all 6 meetings, she was genuinely impressive, and not one of them became a client. She came out convinced that she just needed more meetings, but the problem was never the number of meetings. She walked into all 6 reading the same signal her whole career had taught her to read. Show them how good you are, and they will recognize your value. For 22 years, that signal was right, and in those 6 rooms, it was wrong. She was not running a belief she could question. She was running a reflex. And here's what she missed. Not one of those leaders walked in looking to hire her. They came to honor an introduction or learn something new or just make a good connection. No one was sitting there asking how they might use Dana in their company. But Dana showed up as if it were an audition. She came to prove herself to 6 people who were not judging her at all. So she performed, and they admired the performance, and everyone went home because there was never a decision on the table. And here's the part that stings. There was a reason to work with her in every one of those rooms, but it was hers to bring into being. It was her job to help that leader become aware of something that they had been living with, something quietly costing them that could finally be put right. She walked past that opening 6 times because she was too busy showing them her value instead of uncovering a reason to work together. That's the first distortion. If I show them how valuable I have been, they will recognize my value and hire me. Inside a company, that was true. Out in the open market, most of the people you meet are not evaluating you for anything yet. So the reflex to prove your value produces admiration. And admiration is not engagement. The work begins when someone can see their own situation more clearly through the lens of your expertise. Here's the second one. This is my favorite because I have yet to meet someone who has not lived it. So it starts with a business problem that you already understand. You build a solution to it, you package it, and you go out trying to get company leaders to want what you built. But watch what the whole conversation is about once you get out there. It's about your offer. Every bit of your energy is bent toward getting them to fit themselves into the box that you already made. And they can feel it. So they nod, they say that sounds great, and nothing happens because nobody sees themselves in a pre-built package. People engage when they feel like the offer was shaped around them. Do you see what both of these have in common? In each one, Dana is silently asking the same question. What do I need to say to make them want me? And the answer always leads her right back to herself. Never once does it turn toward the person across the table. Now, this is not just Dana. Every one of us is running conditioning from a lane we used to be in. And the cruel part is the more successful that we were in that old lane, the deeper it runs. So the question is not, do I have one of these distortions? We all do. The question is, where is mine still running a program built for a place that I'm no longer standing? So here's the reframe I most want you to leave with today. This is not a skill problem. It is a perception problem. And perception can change. And I want to tell you how I know. You see, for years, I tried to build the answer for people. I created steps and processes and dozens of considerations for the sales process for every stage. And the frameworks were sharp. And the business development, though, for my clients never got easier. It never became second nature. And eventually I saw why. You cannot sit across from a real human being carrying 40 things in your head and still be present. The more I gave people to think about, the less they could actually see. Because that is what most of us do by default. When something is not working, we add. We add complexity because complexity feels like rigor. But complexity is not clarity. Usually it's the opposite. So I went looking for something simpler. And the one thing that finally let me find these distortions is not what you would expect. You would think that I would find them by reflecting on my own experience. That is exactly what does not work, because the distortion was wearing the glasses the whole time. My experience is evidence that has already been tampered with. So I stopped interrogating my memory and I started interrogating reality. And underneath everything, there was one question, the one that quietly resets everything. What am I missing about what is actually happening for them? Not what should be happening based on what I was told or taught. What is actually happening right now for the person in front of me? Unlike what do I need to say to make them want me, this question points outward at something you can actually see. And the more I lived inside it, the more it showed me distortion after distortion, all about that all of my sales processes had been built right on top of. That is the practice. Not memorizing what to do, getting present enough to keep asking what is actually true here and letting the answer correct you. It's hard to see it for yourself at first, which is why most people find it easier to start alongside someone who's already practiced seeing clearly. And here's what it gives you. When you can see clearly, you become the most present person in the room to what's actually unfolding. You notice the pause before someone answers, the shift in their voice when something lands, the moment they stop defending their situation and start being honest about it. You see the opening, the performing version of you would have walked straight past. And the grind stops being the only engine. The right opportunities start finding you instead of you chasing them down. That's what happened for Dana. She didn't learn to communicate better. She already knew how. What changed was the one thing she stopped asking what she needed to say to make people want her, and started asking what was actually going on for people in front of her. That single shift changed what naturally occurred to her. What to be curious about, what to ask, who to follow up with. None of it came from a checklist. It came from facing a different direction and letting the next move become obvious. Because that's what happens when your orientation shifts. The new behavior is just what makes sense from where you are now standing. Within a few months, the trickle she had fought so hard for started to grow into something steadier because people were reaching out to her now. She had become someone who could see what they were quietly worried about, sometimes before they could see it themselves. The work started coming toward her, but that was the result. It was not the cause. The cause was that she could finally see. So here it is. This is what I want to leave you with. Your orientation is your greatest liability and your greatest asset. The same invisible frame that has been running you without your permission is the one thing in all of this that you can actually control. You cannot make the market want you. You can't force a meeting to convert, but you can learn to see your own frame and turn the compass yourself instead of letting 22 years of old conditioning point you. And when you do, the work gets easier, not harder. This is the difference between grinding out a small business for years and growing something that expands your income and your time both until you are living the goals that you had in mind the day you started. That's where real prosperity lives, not in doing more, in seeing clearly enough to do it differently. And that clarity is not reserved for the lucky few. It is within your reach. It begins the moment you stop asking what must you say to make them want you and start asking the only question that ever opens the door: what am I missing about what is actually happening for them? That is when you stop arguing with reality and you start working with it. And that is when you finally start to see clearly. Below in the description or in the comments below, you'll be able to find a link to the Orientation Gap white paper where you can go deeper into this and see clearer and more for yourself. That resource is there available to you. Have the best day ever.